today is a band that formed in 1988, and they came from California. Now the name of the band is Bang Tango. This band, they only really produced 3 albums and a live album. Now this band is certainly not as big as all the other bands I've showcased, but they're interesting. They're interesting, and I'll go into that a bit later. But their first album they released in 1989. It's called Psycho Cafe, and I'll go through the band members. There's pictures of them here, so there's a full picture of the band there. There's Joe Lest, lead singer. That's Mark Knight, guitar. Kyle Stevens, guitar as well. Tig Kettler, the drums. And Kyle, bass player. Yeah, so Bang Tango, that they released this album, and look, to be perfectly honest with you, this album takes a bit of getting into. I've had this for a few months now, this album, and the first time I listened to it, I thought, oh dear, maybe I've made a mistake. It comes across as a bit rough, and it definitely doesn't have the more polished sound as their second album. Now this is just my personal opinion, but this album was their most successful, and it produced a sort of hit single called Someone Like You, which featured heavily on MTV. Now this band actually were very popular playing live before they actually got signed. Playing live on Sunset Strip in Los Angeles, where all the other bands made a name for themselves, and they actually had quite a few record companies, fighting over this band, as to who would sign them. So, look, they are great musicians. Don't get me wrong; they're very good musicians. Both guitarists, and the bass player especially, because the bass player, his playing technique, he plays with a bit of funk. There's a bit of funk in his playing style, which is interesting because this is a hard rock band, and yes, they did get lumped into the hair metal glam category, which so many other bands were in. But their sound was more, you could describe it as a little bit darker than other bands. I'm not saying totally gothic or anything, but just had that little bit of a darker edge. Sort of in the same vein as maybe LA Guns. It just had a bit of a darker edge to it. But but the more I listen to this album, the more it's growing on me. Very slowly, but it is growing on me. It takes quite a few listens. That's it. That's just me. Now on this album too, Joe Lest, the lead singer, some of the songs the way he sings, it's a snarly, screeching type of singing on some of the songs, and as soon as I heard it, it just reminded me of Tame Down, the lead singer of Faster Pussycat. That's the way Tame used to sing the Faster Pussycat songs, which worked brilliantly with Faster Pussycat. And actually interesting enough, reading the liner notes in this album, Bang Tango do thank Faster Pussycat. So maybe maybe Joe Lest got his inspiration from Tame Down in regards to the singing style. But he's a very good singer, Joe Lest. Don't get me wrong. So yeah, this was released in '89, and it did have a bit of success. It didn't go gold album sales or platinum album sales, but as I said, this is growing on me. Every time I listen to it, it's growing on me that little bit more. So that was Psycho Cafe. Now, 1991, they released Dancing on Coals. Now, this album I like. I actually prefer this album over their first album. This album is a bit more... It's a bit more commercial. And the way the songs are structured, it's a bit more easygoing than the first album. As I said, there's more... It's the same band lineup. Joe Lest, Mark Knight, Kyle, as I said, Kyle, the bass player, as I said just before, is a really good bass player, very good bass player. And actually, speaking of Kyle, he and Tame Down, the lead singer of Faster Pussycat, when Bang Tango broke up for a few years, Kyle joined Tame Down in a band called the Newly Deads. It's not exactly a happy name, the Newly Deads, but yeah, those two formed a band together, Tame Down from Faster Pussycat and Kyle. But I haven't heard any of that stuff. But there's Kyle Stevens, the other guitarist, and the drummer, Tig Kettler. Yeah, now with this album, yeah, it's a bit more easy listening, I found. And it's got some really great songs, and the song structures are really good. The only real single they released was called Untied and True. And that's a really good rocking song. Now, for the life of me, there's a song called Dressed Up Vamp. Now, I do not know why they didn't release this as a single. It is a great song, Dressed Up Vamp. It's got a bit of a darker type edge to it, the song, but it really rocks along, and it's got a good little chorus to it. And I reckon that Dressed Up Vamp would have done really well. Well, that's my personal opinion, because that is one of the standout tracks of Dancing on Coals. Yeah, so that's Bang Tango, and they did release another album called Love After Death a few years after this one, but there's some... something happened with the record company, and the album sort of got put on the shelf, so to speak, and didn't see the light of day for a few years after that. So Love After Death is very hard to get. You can only really pick it up in Europe and Japan. I heard that they're really the only places that you can really hope to find that. But I suppose, in this day and age on the internet, I'll be able to find it somewhere if I really want to. But I can honestly say I'm not planning to look for that album. I'm quite happy with these two albums of Bang Tango. I'm not going to go look for that one. They also released another album called Live Injection, I think it's called, and that was just a live album of all the songs they played live. Now, Bang Tango, they have played with other well-known bands like Cheap Trick, LA Guns, and I've heard that they are still playing to this day, sort of on and off. So, as I said, an interesting band, not your normal run-of-the-mill bands that I've showcased previously. They had a bit of a darker edge, and they didn't have the sort of the big party songs and all that Motley Crue and Poison and Warrant had. But very good musicians. I can't stress that enough. Very good musicians, and I think Joe Lest, his voice shines more on this album. You can really hear his voice doing justice to the band on this album. Don't get me wrong, it did justice on this album as well, but personally, I like this album. So, yeah, that's Bang Tango. They're an interesting band. It's very hard to sort of typecast them into a specific music genre. They are hard rock, but they've got something else to them. They're a bit of a different bunch, these guys, but well worth a listen. if people were going to get into this album, if people were going to get into this band, I would suggest you listen to this album, and you'd be pleasantly surprised. There we go. So that's Bang Tango, and now the next album we might look at would be, let's see. What I'm going to do, I'm going to incorporate. I'm going to incorporate two albums together of two different bands. The next one. Now, one is called Dangerous Toys. Now, this is the only album I have of these guys, and the other one is called The Scream, and that's the only album. Was the only album they ever made. So I'm going to incorporate these two albums together. Now there's no ties or anything between these two bands, so they got nothing to do with each other. But I'm just going to incorporate these two together since I don't really have a lot of material to talk about one specific band. So we'll look at Dangerous Toys and The Scream next time. So until then, thank you again for watching, and I hope everyone's doing well, and stay safe and keep on rocking, and we'll talk next time. Bye.